Mark chapter 6. Our series has been, Are You Following Jesus? And this morning, I want to ask you the question, are you following your spiritual leaders? Are you following your loving leaders? That's the question I want to ask. Let me just read 6:1-6. He went away from there and came to his hometown, and his disciples followed him. And on the Sabbath he began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were astonished, saying, "Where did this man get these things? What is the wisdom given to him? How are such mighty works done by his hands? Is this not the carpenter, the son of Mary, and brother of James, and Joseph, and Judas, and Simon? And are not his sisters here with us?" And they took offense at him. And Jesus said to them, "A prophet is not without honor except in his hometown, and among his relatives, and in his own household." And he could do no mighty work there, except that he laid his hand on a few sick people and healed them. And he marveled because of their unbelief. So in the previous chapter, we saw some amazing acts of faith, didn't we? Here's this demoniac who gets freed, and he says, "I want to follow you, Jesus." And Jesus sends him into Decapolis to preach about what Jesus did for him. And then you have this man, Jarvis, who is a synagogue leader, who actually says, "I need Jesus. I need him to heal my daughter," and believes that he can. And then you have this woman reaching out to him. So you have all this faith in the previous chapter. And then Jesus, I really think Jesus was probably looking forward to going to his hometown, right? He wants to go see the people he grew up with. You know what that's like. You get to see the people you went to high school with. Maybe you don't want to see the people you went to high school with. But some of you want to see the people you went to high school with, right? And so he's coming to his own hometown. And notice who's following him. The disciples followed him. So he's coming in a slightly different manner, different context. Now, what we just read is the rated G version of this return to the hometown. If you want to see the PG-13 version later this afternoon, don't look now, read Luke. Luke has a PG-13 version of this where they attempt to kill him. So the disciples are seeing this. You see that they followed him, right? They see this, and so Jesus goes into the synagogue on the Sabbath, and he begins to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were astonished. Now that's not unusual, right? We hear about that even back in chapter 1, where they were astonished at his teaching, for he taught as one who had authority, right? Previously in Capernaum he taught, and they were amazed, and he cast out a demon there and all that. Well, here they're astonished, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But this is neat little connection here. They're astonished at what he says, and he's astonished at their unbelief. And so they're being astonished. They're looking at this guy and they're saying, what do they call Jesus? He is there from their own hometown. Does it sound like they're talking to him like, this is our hometown boy? This man is what they say. Where did this man get these things? And that, I think, isn't that the first comment they make? Yeah, that's the first comment they make, and that really does summarize all the comments, because he's a man. And you know what? He kind of looks like his mother. Maybe, right? He's going to have some family resemblance, which in that hometown allows them to kind of look down on him, because we know where he's come from. His brothers, he looks like his brothers, right? And the way they refer to him is entirely derogatory. First they refer to what he says, right? But where did he get this wisdom? Who does he think he is? He didn't go to the schools that we know he should have gone to. What is this wisdom given to him? How are such mighty works done by his hands? This guy's from our town. This can't be real. Now, I hope you're not hearing this in this way, but you probably are. You look at these Nazarenes and you think, what was wrong with them? Same thing that's wrong with us. Okay? Same thing that's wrong with us. And you may say to me, well, but we know who Jesus is. Yes, you do. Do you know what Jesus has done for you in relationship to giving you spiritual leaders, loving leaders in your life? Are the loving leaders and the spiritual leaders in your life human? They are, aren't they? And isn't it easy that, don't you know, and you've experienced this, familiarity breeds what? Contempt. And so the trouble with these people is the same trouble we have when we look down on or disrespect the spiritual leaders God has put in your life. Now, when I'm saying spiritual leaders, I am talking about husbands. I am talking about parents. I'm talking about pastors. I'm talking about the people in your job who you have to listen to, right? Who are your boss. Now you may say, well, some of those people aren't spiritual. You're right. But all authority, what? Is appointed by God. So what we need to realize is that Jesus here is the spiritual leader, and he's being rejected because he's so familiar. And I think that can be our issue as well. That people become so familiar to us. I mean, we've been living with them for so long, and we know how they are. And it's dangerous to think that way. It's dangerous to look down on the people that God has put over you. Now, I'm going to be using the term spiritual leader because many of the people who are over you are Christians. But I want you to also recognize that the majority of people who've been over you in your life have loved you. Would you agree? Right? They have loved you. So if they aren't spiritual, if it isn't spiritual leadership, it's at least loving leadership. And we are, as children, as young adults, we're to submit to our parents. We're to honor our parents, even when we get older. We're to honor our parents. So we're all under some form of loving leadership, right? And I hope, and these people. Here's the funny thing. I didn't bring the song up here. That first song that we sang. Here they're at church just like you, right? And you know what? I was looking at that first song, and guess what? These people could have sung that song. But you say they're Jews. Yeah. You say they don't believe in Jesus. Yeah. They could have sung that first song. Now, I'm not criticizing that song. Understand, we know what we're saying by that song. But what I do want you to understand is why it is so important to be looking for the gospel in songs. Because here's a song that these Jews could sing while simultaneously rejecting Jesus. Couldn't they? I mean, some of you are looking at the words. It's entirely possible, isn't it? Because Lord to them is Yahweh. And it's, and there's reflections of Job in that, and they're all for that. So keep in mind that we, like these Nazarenes, are sitting in a worship time and we're asking, well, who am I supposed to be following? What's this person saying? What is my spiritual leader telling me? And I don't want to be, and I don't want you to be, this is why I keep saying this. I don't want you to be a Nazarene in this sense. Okay, yeah, I know Jesus was a Nazarene. We should be like, no, I don't want you to be like a Nazarene in this context. Because notice while they first criticize what he teaches, the root issue comes in verse 3. It goes back to the whole thing of this man, right? Is not this the carpenter? The son of Mary, which doesn't imply Joseph. Joseph may be alive, may not be alive, but either way, saying son of Mary is an implication of something illegitimate. Because typically in that culture, you would talk about identifying a son with a father, not identifying a son with a mother. And we know these kids. We know what they're like. Now just think about this. Think about this. They know what these kids are like. Now, this is 30 years in a community with Jesus, his brothers and sisters. And they were all teenagers at some point, right? They're all teenagers. Yes, Jesus is the oldest. But is it not entirely possible that the people of the town would have relationships in such a way with some of the children, and their children with children, right? Their children are knowing Mary and Joseph's kids, and you hear this stuff, and you know, what do we know for sure about Jesus' brothers, and at least his brothers for sure? What? They were not believers. Who knows what they thought of Jesus and how they talked to their friends about him, how they talked to their community about him, right? We got to assume if they're unbelievers, they're not liking Jesus in a lot of ways. He's the older brother who always does it right. That's so annoying. But not only does he always does it right, he's so kind about it, which is just all the more irritating to these people, right? So you got to realize this community is having a real hard time with the humanity of Jesus. This is a beautiful picture of his humanity and how significantly real he was as a human being, which allows us some glimpse into the fact of why it's so easy for us to disregard spiritual leaders who have skin on, right? I mean, if they can do it to him, how easy is it for us to do it to people who aren't Jesus, right? Every one of you under spiritual, loving leadership have seen failure in that spiritual, loving leadership, haven't you? Well, here there's been no failure. Here, there's been no sin committed against by Jesus of anybody ever in that town. Isn't that amazing? Just think about that. And here's something I'm going to encourage you with this. Jesus lived with these people for 30 years, never sinned against anybody, grew in favor with God and man among these people, and yet was unable to influence them. So what am I telling you? Stop beating yourself up over the people you're closest to who you just can't figure out why they won't believe. Don't beat yourself up over that. Jesus had a perfect record, right? You see it? Perfect record. He did everybody right. Never made anybody pay for it, for what they did wrong to him. And yet they were put off by him. They were, the word here, the word offense in verse 3 is the word scandalized. It's the word that means to fall away, to sin, or to be put off. They put him off. They did not like it. They were repelled by him, and yet he has never sinned against any of them. Isn't that amazing? Sometimes we think, well, the reason people don't believe the gospel through me is because my walk doesn't match my talk. Okay, that's true, but guess what? I've seen people saved through what I'm sharing, and I know I do things wrong, and I know more here than I know more here, right? That's not necessarily the only reason. It's a supernatural act. And what this text is really revealing isn't an option of, well, some people, they choose to believe and some don't. That's not what this text is revealing. You got to realize, Jesus is amazed here. Why is Jesus amazed? He's amazed because of their unbelief. Just walk with Jesus for a minute, coming back to his own hometown. He's savvy enough to know that many of them won't go along with what he says. He's not stupid any more than we are at times when we have family members and people, and you can kind of get the cold shoulder sense that they're really not interested in hearing this. Jesus knew that going in there. But how he cared for them to speak the truth in love at the risk of his own life, he did this. Because, like I said, in the PG-13 version over in Luke, they attempt to kill him. Now, here's what we got to understand. We got to understand that we're trusting Jesus to save people through our lives with them, just as Jesus is trusting God to save these people through the message. So, you can be really good at this, like Jesus, right? You can live it and you can walk it. And the point is, people have wicked hearts. It isn't a matter of decision, it's a matter of disposition. It's a matter of, as Matthew 12 says, you guys know this, Matthew 12, either make the tree good and its fruit good, or make the tree bad and its fruit bad, for the tree is known by its fruit. You brood of vipers, how can you speak good when you are evil? For out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks. The good person out of the good treasure brings forth good, and the evil person out of the evil treasure brings forth evil. So the problem isn't, please understand this, because I know this is often your perplexity. Why doesn't my family believe? Why don't the people I share Christ with believe? Have I not been clear? The reason they don't believe is because the Bible says they have an evil heart. An evil heart is the reason they don't believe. Why? Well, what has God got to do? He's got to give them a new heart. One of the best texts to describe this is Ephesians 4. Ephesians 4:17. Now this I say and testify in the Lord, that you must no longer walk as the Gentiles do, in the futility of their minds. Okay, in the futility of their minds. Oh, so it's a brain problem. It's the fact that they just don't get it. Well, let's keep reading. They are darkened in their understanding. See, it's a brain problem. They don't get it. No, keep reading. Alienated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them. See, it's a brain problem. What does the last phrase say? What is all that due to? What is the futility of their mind, their darkness of understanding, and their alienation of God and their ignorance all due to? Hardness of heart. It is a dispositional problem, not a decision problem, which is the whole fallacy of Arminianism, right? Is that we just going to give people a choice? They just need a choice. Well, these people had a choice for 30 years. And Jesus comes back. Think how sweet he is. He comes here. He's just had a very successful ministry over at Capernaum. And now he's going to go to his own hometown and be run off. Then notice what he says. A prophet is not without honor except in 3 areas: hometown, relatives, household. 3 circles right there, right? An inner circle, an outer circle, and an outer circle. Now, please accept the statement, a prophet. Jesus is a prophet. A prophet is somebody who brings God's message. So the question isn't, well, maybe he's not a prophet. No. A true prophet, right, is not acceptable. He's disregarded. So, as I say this, I want parents to understand something. I want parents to understand that they're not going to be followed at times because they're saying what God says, and kids don't want to do it. I want husbands to understand that you can speak for God to your wife. That doesn't mean that she's going to follow you, right? For those of you who are going to church, I'm supposed to understand the fact that I'm going to tell you what God says, and you're not going to do it at times. But that doesn't change the responsibility of the parent, of the father, or of the husband, or of the pastor. We have to continue to speak the truth in love. Well, quick application in relationship to this spiritual leadership. Maybe some of you are thinking now, boy, I hope I'm not a Nazarene, and I don't want to be a Nazarene. Well, how do I know if I'm going to be a Nazarene or not? Here's your test, okay? Here's your test. I'm going to tell you something as your spiritual leader. I'm going to tell you to do something right now, okay? I want you this week to consider something. I want you to consider loving someone in this church. I want you to consider encouraging them to do something for someone else. I want you to encourage them to believe something true. I want you to love them. I want you to stir them up to love and good deeds. I want you to do something for them. I want you to love them, and I want you to do something for them. Now, think for a minute. Sometimes we do that, and we're like, okay, I've given that person money, or I helped that person out. I don't need to go to church Sunday, because I already helped those people. Don't think that way, because the verse I'm telling you is Hebrews 10, 24 and 25, and what it says is, while you're doing that, don't neglect being together. So there's the spiritual, so you check if you're a Nazarene this week by asking yourself, am I looking to other people to encourage them, to build them up, to stimulate them to love and good deeds, or am I neglecting being with God's people? Am I trying to find ways that is every little thing stopping me from being with God's people? 1 John 4:7. All love comes from God. And you know why God gives that love? He's got a target in mind. You know what the target of God's love is? You know what the perfection of God's love is? Is that he says, I got this reservoir of love that if you would just look to me for, I would give it to you. And the target then is for you to then love one another. That's God's goal.